morning. You're watching Business World Live. I'm Danie, Laurel.
And in just Delos Santos, it's the start of a new trading day, but first, let's go straight to our top story. The Asian Development Bank plans to extend up to $9.4 billion in loans to the Philippines over the next 3 years. More than half of the amount will finance transportation projects, including railways, roads, and bridges, while 12% will fund the implementation of the Universal Healthcare Law. ADB Vice President Ahmed Said said the lender is focusing on infrastructure because of its large employment multiplier effects and the support it gives to long-term economic growth through improved connectivity. For next year, the ADB looks to extend over $3.5 billion to the Philippines, half of which is programmed for the first phase of the South Commuter Railway project. The rest are expected to fund other key projects such as Metro Manila Bridges and the Davao Public Transport Modernization Project. For 2023, the amount of loans is pegged at $2.95 billion. Nearly half will be allotted for the second phase of the South Commuter Railway, while the rest will be for the MRT-4 or the Ortigas to Rizal line and projects for inclusive finance development, social assistance, and the UHC program. The Philippines' total borrowings from the lender reached $4.2 billion this year. All right, Dan, our index still in fighting mode, staged a midweek recovery. Where are we now?
All right. Well, a bit of a pullback, unfortunately, Jess, after, as you mentioned, Wednesday saw us with a bit of optimism. They were down by 0.4% the first 3 minutes of trade, but still well above 7,200 levels here. Recall that we had already closed in on 7,300. Now, we actually, according to several analysts, rebounded yesterday after that remittance sprint, which surprised for the month of November, about 2.9% up compared to the 2.2% that was expected. But apart from that, also a lot of vaccine efforts going around all over the world. You have got more on that later on in your speed desk. So quite some strong trades in terms of volume. So 9.31 billion pesos worth. And even despite net foreign selling, that was lower than the previous days at least. Now, another thing that is showing some optimism, not necessarily showing in our numbers here, but basically offshore analysts are upgrading Philippine shares. You've got UBS, for example, upgrading Philippine shares to overweight. Last month, they are expecting our GDP to rebound by, get this, 8% in 2021. It's actually higher than some of the reports that we've been giving. And profits to grow a whopping 53%. So a lot of optimism from UBS there for 2021. Still, they did admit that there's a lot of uncertainty, especially with the tourism industry. Another one that's looking at the Philippine stocks right now is Goldman Sachs. They're saying naman to hold, so stay neutral on the country shares. Now, when you go to the local analysts, for instance, Jonathan Ravelas, who's of course the chief strategic officer of BDO, he is much more optimistic than those offshore. He said that the increased government and infra spending and also the positive vaccine developments might actually push our benchmark to 7,600 by the end of 2021. And you've got one other CIO of Sun Life, Mike Enriquez. We've had him on the show. He's looking at 8,000 for next year rather, not next week. So he does say there's a lot of room for a huge recovery. Now, I'm just going to pull out the financial sector for you because, of course, we are looking at waiting for the BSP decision. So their meeting is going to be this morning, but they're going to be announcing the decision at 4 o'clock later on. Recall that you've got us and Indonesia right now set to meet in terms of our central banks, and everybody that has been surveyed by Bloomberg, so 16 economists, are all saying that the BSP will be holding after, of course, its surprise rate cut last time. That was last month. So it's now at 2%, the lowest ever. And this, according to Eugenia Victorino, head of Asia strategy at SEB, the central banks are probably going to be ending their easing cycles, especially since in the Philippines, the impact of easing has been limited pa rin, due to, of course, our struggling and limited movement. I just want to take a quick step back here. Financials, by the way, down by 0.6% in anticipation of a hold. in terms of the policy rate. Now, let's just take a quick peek at GT Cap, which is a specific stock I wanted to look at on the back of this. Actually came out yesterday na the vehicle sales, and I wanted to report that they're still low, Jess, in the month of November. So not necessarily staging a rebound here. That declined 33% year on year in the month of November from a year ago. But of course, we had all of those typhoons also hitting the country. This is from data from CAMPI, so the Chamber of Automotive Manufacturers of the Philippines with the Truck Manufacturers Association. So down by 7.4% in the month of November. And from January to November, all of the sales were still down by 41.6%. So year to date, down by 41.6%. But they're also hoping for a rebound next year. Campi seeing 30 to 50% increase in the vehicle sales from 2021, Jess.
Okay, Dan, from automotives, let's move on. Of course, to infrastructure, the Build program has definitely seen setbacks this year, and the efforts to revive it has stumbled. What's the latest on our infra players?
Okay, so yesterday the main story was, Mega Wide no longer having the bid, let's say, the
Original proponent status.
proponent status, yes, with GMR, but we don't really know why that is yet. They are saying that they're going to file a motion for reconsideration, and this according to a Philippine Star source. So note that this hasn't been yet confirmed by the DOTR or neither by San Miguel, but a ranking official from the DOTR has told the Philippine Star that he has heard that San Miguel Corporation has made a bid for the NAIA original proponent status. So they could end up operating and maintaining the NAIA after, of course, this mega-wide GMR fell through. The DOTR official, however, said there's no published or written policy preventing one group to be involved in several airports right now because they're also doing Bulacan, diba? So there's actually no prohibition on that. But as I mentioned, DOTR and MIA have still remained silent so far. We're still waiting on more news on that and the reasons for why the mega-wide GMR has lost that and what's going to happen on the motion for reconsideration. Nevertheless, San Miguel trading flat right now at 137 pesos. Another one in terms of infra, of course, is MPI. And we've been reporting on the NLEX saga here. Now President Duterte is in on that. He is telling the toll operators to fix the cashless payment glitches. So he said, not just the toll operators, but the owners and the developers of the toll, especially because the public is paying you. That's according to him. He said this in a televised briefing. He also said, so apart from the private space, he also said he wants leadership change in the toll regulatory board because he says that all of these glitches in the NLEX issue has hurt the government's reputation. So very interesting. He also said this according to Art Tugade's transport secretary, toll operators should waive the fees and remove barriers if the sensors malfunction. Now, just to clarify, Valenzuela Mayor Rex Gatchalian has actually now lifted the suspension against the NLEX BIS permit. So now the toll barriers will be up and running. So it's 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily, and they will be collecting toll, but there will now be cash lanes again, Jess. So you can see MPIC down by 0.2% this morning. Now, let's move on from the markets towards the race for vaccines. It's a very, very interesting article that you've got here from Bloomberg. Our neighbors, however, in Southeast Asia seem to be having a head start. What is going on here?
Okay, as expected, of course, you have a number of countries here already making a headway here, head start, like what you mentioned when it comes to vaccine race. Considering the fact that, Southeast Asia, we are a region of more than 650 million, all with different challenges here, whether it be fiscally as well as the demographics and even distribution challenges. A number of countries, of course, being on archipelago, like the Philippines, of course. But you see, a number of nations here are already making huge progress here, huge leaps, like of Singapore, of course, being the wealthiest in the region, as well as Indonesia, which has the worst outbreak in Southeast Asia. They are leading the pack when it comes to vaccine procurement here. Now, let's take a deep dive into where each country now is when it comes to shots. This, of course, like what you mentioned, is care of a tracker from Bloomberg. Let's start off with Indonesia. They are targeting to vaccinate at least 107 million of their population. They are targeting to have at least 246 million doses here, with a monthly goal of vaccinating at least 16 million of their population a month. Now, also, if you try to take a look at the figures here, much of those shots will be coming from Sinovac here. They are targeting 125.5 million doses from the Chinese pharmaceutical here. In fact, they are at least expecting, or at least 1.2 million doses have already arrived early in December, and they are expecting 1.8 million more to come in by next month. Sinovac is going to ship as well raw materials for 45 million doses to be developed by Indonesia's PP Biopharma, and that they are targeting, in fact, from there to produce at least 24 million doses a month. Other than that, they are also targeting 30 million doses from Novavax. And get this, this is what's also the interesting part here, Dan. They are self-developing their own vaccine here via Merah Putih. And through that facility, they are hoping to at least produce 57.6 million doses. Other than that, they are also in talks for other sources here, the likes of Gavi Vaccine Facility. They are hoping to get at least 106 million doses from that. They are also in negotiations with AstraZeneca and Pfizer for around 100 million doses here. For them, the challenge is not really the logistics of supplying shots in thousands of their islands, but it's really more of production here. They are, of course, targeting to at least give free vaccines to their population. In fact, their finance minister has already been instructed to reallocate spending for inoculation. At the same time, their president, Joko Widodo, will actually be vaccinated first in the country to at least encourage their population that, it's actually safe to get vaccinated. Now, other than that, let's move on to Malaysia here. Looking at their vaccine targets here, their target population is around 70%, 10% of which will be vaccinated via the COVAX facility, of course, under the World Health Organization. Other than that, they are reaching out to 10 other companies with vaccines at phase 3 clinical trials already. They are also expecting at least vaccine trials to start in December. That is, of course, a government-to-government deal with China's Medical Biology, Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences. They have a memorandum of understanding with China back in October for priority access to shots. Other than China's vaccines, they are also targeting 12.8 million doses from Pfizer, 1 million of which will be delivered come the first quarter of 2021. Another 1.7 million will come in the second quarter, 5.8 million in the third quarter of 2021. And lastly, by year end next year, they are expecting 4.3 million doses more. Again, that totals 12.8 million doses from Pfizer. That, of course, is expected to vaccinate at least 6.4 million of Malaysia's population. So definitely lots of developments here when it comes to Malaysia here. They are, of course, targeting both sources here, whether it be Eastern or Western. And then lastly, let's take a look at Thailand, which is pretty much, controlled the spread of the virus in their country here. They are targeting that by mid-2021, they can already start the inoculation process in their country. They are targeting a population of 50%. Now, 26 million of the doses will be coming from the COVAX facility, again, under the World Health Organization. Then they're also in talks with AstraZeneca for 26 million doses. At the same time, there are other sources for 13 million shots as well. Again, the target is to immunize at least 13 million. When it comes to AstraZeneca, they are targeting the shots to actually arrive by mid-2021. And what's interesting as well here, Dan, is that they have an ongoing agreement with AstraZeneca for technology transfer so that Thailand will actually have the capacity to produce their own set of vaccines. And after which, they will then supply shots at reasonable prices to neighboring countries like Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, and even Cambodia. Now, Thailand also is developing their own set of shots here through an mRNA facility, and they are going to start their first phase trials in April, a second phase of which will begin in June, and they are at least targeting for their own domestic shots to at least be available by the end of 2021. So definitely lots of these countries already making a head start here when it comes to developing their own shots. You are going to take a look at 3 more other countries tomorrow. That includes Vietnam, Singapore, and of course, the Philippines, the top choice of which, as it appears right now, is going to be China's Sinovac. Now, the government has already allotted at least 72 billion, if I'm not mistaken, over 70 billion pesos for the vaccines. You have the private sector as well already pooling resources for shots from AstraZeneca.
Okay, Jess. Well, sana all, diba? It seems that the rest of Asia seems to be on track, so we're waiting for that. Baka naman it will come by next year as well for us. Just a quick peek on the Bloomberg terminal. You can see the coronavirus cases. So the brighter the color, the more cases, diba? So as you already mentioned, Thailand, Vietnam, those countries towards this area here in a very dark color compared to the Philippines and Indonesia and India, which are still seeing some of the highest cases in the region.
Now, here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The Philippines is likely to suffer a GDP contraction only until the first quarter of next year. That's according to Singapore-based DBS Bank. That said, the country will gradually recover from a pandemic-induced recession. DBS economist Radhika Rao said the Philippines may post an overall growth of 7% after contracting by 8.5% this year due to the pandemic. She added that ultimately, the pandemic curve, vaccine availability, and resumption of infrastructure spending will dictate the path ahead. Rao said the worst of the pandemic slump is likely over as the restrictions continue to ease, aiding mobility and economic activity. Still, she said tepid consumption and slower government disbursements would restrain investment growth as spending priorities shift towards those that are strictly essential. So despite the growth projection for 2021, DBS says turnaround will be tentative given the overhead of income and employment uncertainty weighing on household balance sheets. Now, the Senate has approved on second reading a bill seeking to strengthen our country's regulations to counter money laundering. However, this version was not the measure certified by President Duterte as urgent. The certification would have allowed the Senate to approve the bill in the second and third reading in a single day.
This would have been helpful since the chamber will adjourn for a month-long break. That's until January 17. The lawmakers claim they received a letter from the chief executive saying he would make the new bill a priority measure if they will make certain adjustments to the existing bill. This includes lowering the threshold for tax crimes from 50 to 20 million, retaining the threshold for real estate transactions, and providing additional investigative powers to the AMLC. For Senate President Tito Soto, the conditions set by Malacanang violate the separation of powers, while Senator Grace Poe, who sponsored the bill, says she will only allow amendments acceptable to the body. Recall that the Philippines has been given until February of next year to address deficiencies in the AMLA. Now, Senate Pro Tempore Ralph Recto files a third Bayanihan stimulus package that's worth 458 billion pesos in the Senate. That's a counterpart of the House bill filed by Marikina Representative Stella Kimbo. Bayanihan III seeks to boost the country's recovery from the pandemic and recent typhoons. Now, unlike the first two rounds of stimulus, the Bayanihan III bill, which is formally known as the Bayanihan to Rebuild as One Act, does not grant President Duterte special powers. The measure adds an additional 55 billion pesos to the country's fund for COVID-19 vaccines, which currently stands at 82 billion pesos in total. Some 100 billion pesos, meanwhile, will be allocated for workers' subsidies, 70 billion pesos for the Social Amelioration Program, and 20 billion pesos for households affected by the typhoons. Recto said 20 billion pesos will also be allocated for vaccine storage, while 35 billion pesos will be provided for hiring additional contact tracers and funding testing and treatments. The opening up of public transport has been a point of contention this year, and with holiday season in full swing and COVID 19 transmission rates still increasing, to what extent are we ready for easing of restrictions? Here to share with us his views, we have Light Rail Manila Corporation's President Juan Alfonso. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, good
Morning,
morning.
sir.
Sir, let's kick off with a general overview of what has happened this year to LRMC, but particularly to the LRT1. How much of an effect has it had on your operations, and how did you respond during this difficult time?
Yes, just as a background, when the pandemic started, we originally we were asked to lower our ridership. No, that was the first few days before the hard lockdown in March. No, and then during the ECQ, we stopped operations, and then afterward we were allowed to resume operations only at about 13%. No. Um, uh, at present, we've been allowed to increase our capacities, and I think this is also in line with best practices. A lot of people feel or have the impression that public transportation is not safe. No, um, our company has worked with UITP, the International Transport Association for Public Transport, and also best practices in the Department of Transportation to really benchmark what has been done abroad and what has kept the system safe. No? We've instituted a lot of measures, made sure that we have proper ventilation in all of our vehicles, and what you call this, the system itself is safe. No, contrary to I think a lot of impressions of people. No?
Sir, you've mentioned that you are safe. You have had consultation with offshore people as well on how they have been coping. But the question is, are we ready to reopen at full capacity? I mean, to what extent can you say we can start operating, and what are you pushing to happen?
Well, right now, what has been happening is that people have slowly gotten back to work. No, I think the numbers in terms of people going back to work are consistent with economic activity that has been mentioned by the economic managers. No, people have gone back to work slowly. We're not experiencing the bounce back or like the V-shaped recovery or U-shaped recovery of other markets. No, like Japan and Tokyo, Osaka, and even Bangkok, where the people going back to work are at about 70-80% already. Um, I think if you look at the mobility stats of for example Google, they're at about 50%. So what you're going to see the movement of public transportation consistent with that, and I think it's a number of factors. One of it is still a lot of people are afraid. No, have to communication or the message has to be made that it's safe to take public transport, or it's safe to move around public transport with the minimum health standards, no, prescribed by our partners in the DOTR and in the DOH. No. Also, I think prescribed by the IATF.
Mhm. So I want to move the discussion over to your expansion projects here, specifically, of course, the Cavite expansion. Are you still on target to actually meet your goal of at least completing the line by, at least if I'm not mistaken, end of 2021? And have you taken the time, at least during the pandemic, to actually bolster your construction here for the extension project?
Yeah, the Cavite extension continues. I think the project completion is at about 50% right now. The pandemic really, like a lot of projects, we had a lot of delays. No? We had to figure out the health and security and safety of the workers, how to work in a safe environment. No, so I think that has led to some delays, definitely. Um, we're still going through the program in terms of having several revisions, no, to see what the I guess what the timing will be like for completion of the extension. But we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from a lot of people who have seen the construction, which is already at the Ninoy Aquino Avenue area right now. And then I think by early January, we're going to be at the Parañaque River in terms of the viaducts being completed. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Now talking about new projects on the pipeline, there are also other railways that are being proposed all over the Luzon area as well. To what extent, sir, is not just LRT1 ready to operate, but the rest of the transportation network in the country ready to seamlessly operate? Because there's also concern not just of one trajectory, but also how this can connect. You'll need to connect for commuters to get to their workplace. You'll need to connect to tricycles. You'll need to connect to jeepneys. You'll need to connect to buses and other railways. So how are you solving this problem?
Um, our vision for the commuting public, I think, is more than operating our train system. We want to give our riders a seamless journey. No, so one thing that we've done is we've introduced an app. It's called Ikot MNL, which is available on Google and App Store. And what this does really, it helps our customers or riders plan a journey from what we call the first mile or the first ride that they come out when they come out of their house into the LRT and then to the final destination. So it allows them to plan this seamless journey, and then the routes of the other public transportation providers are all loaded into this system to help people really map out their commute in in Metro Manila. No? I think we're working with the DOTR on improving the connectivity. One of the initiatives we have is the opening of the unified common station in which will link LRT 1, MRT 3, and MRT 7. No, um, in that North EDSA area. No, so I think the DOTR and its partners are doing have plans for better making it more seamless or the interactive mobility more feel like more one system rather than several separate systems.
All right, sir. Given that, sir, what are you looking forward to at least in 2021? It's also interesting to note as well that other than providing a seamless operation here, mobility at least for our commuters, you've already made headway as well when it comes to these contact tracing efforts, especially for your commuters. So given that, what are you looking forward to in 2021 and what should we expect for LRT1, please?
I think we're looking to in terms of 2021. I think show and demonstrate to a lot of our riders that the system is safe. No, um, a lot has been spoken about possible airflow and ventilation. The LRT coaches, the doors open every 2 minutes. No, so there's fresh air that comes into the system, and the doors stay open for about 30 seconds. Um, Apart from that, our message continues to be that the system is safe. And one of the other things we're doing is we're adding uh, aircraft grade HEPA filters in all of our coaches with UV light treatment for the air conditioning. And these filters also are able to capture the virus should they be out in the air. No? So I think these measures, together with the more disinfection and cleaning that is being done, uh,
Mhm.
allow there's no dead air. No, we even go as far as measuring the CO2. No, so that the airflow is measured. Make the commuter feel safe. No, and provide better and efficient service to our passengers. No?
Sir, just short term here, it's Christmas season. Transmission rates are going higher than normal. What is this so-called Christmas train? What is it exactly, and how are you going to be, having an effective and safe commute during this holiday season?
Yeah, I think we already mentioned some of the measures which will continue.
Mhm.
And then the mask is on the train so that it's compliant with minimum health standards. Just one train, unfortunately. But it's really a tribute to our frontliners, and it's a reminder,
Okay.
and it's a fun reminder to people that it's you can make it fun at the same time. It's something that's catchy and people remember it. No? And I think so much has been said about tribute to the frontliners, but I think they really deserve it, and they're really risking a lot of lives, their lives, and keeping the country safe. I think rather than we support the government from their move to risk avoidance to risk management. All of us have to live with with this virus. Your earlier reports had the vaccine rollout schedules, and we have to learn how to live safely, and I think LRMC is doing this its part in helping the commuter have a safe journey.
Okay, thank you so much. So, of course, risk management is key, especially during this Christmas season, and watch out for that Christmas train at the LRT1 stations. Thank you so much. That was, of course, LRMC's President Juan Alfonso. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
And that's the first look into the business day. Today's Thursday, December 17. I'm Danie Laurel.
Okay, catch us again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. I'm Jess Delos Santos. We are One News.
Is that Camille?